I am Maria Garcia de Fleury. Saint Catherine Drexel is the second American born saint canonized by the Catholic Church. She was born in Philadelphia on November 26, 1858, the daughter of a prominent and wealthy banker called Francis Anthony Drexel. Her mother died 5 weeks after her birth. Her father remarried with Emma Bouvier. The Drexel couple were devout in the practice of their faith and gave their daughters an excellent education and an example of true Christian living. Weekly, they sheltered and cared for the poor. They distributed food, clothing. After watching her stepmother suffer from terminal cancer for 3 years, Catherine learned that no amount of money could protect them from pain or suffering. From that moment on, Catherine's life took a turn. She was imbued with a passionate love for God and her neighbor, and took an avid interest in the material and spiritual well being of Blacks and Native Americans. In 1884, while her family was visiting the Western states, Catherine saw firsthand the troubling and poor situation of Native Americans. She decided to help them. When her father died a year later, she donated part of his more than $15.5 million estate to charity, and then he left the rest to be divided equally among his three daughters. When her father died, Catherine and her sisters contributed money to help the Rosebud Reservation of the St. Francis Mission in South Dakota. But she saw that more people were needed to help those Native Americans. Therefore, in 1887, the Drexel sisters traveled to Europe and had a private audience with Pope Leo XIII to request missionaries to help with the Indian missions they were funding. The Pope Leo XIII looked at Catherine and said, "Why don't you become a missionary yourself?" This got her thinking. She consulted with her spiritual director and decided to give herself and her heritage to God through service to both Native Americans and African Americans. Catherine made her postulancy at the Sisters of Mercy Convent in Pittsburgh in 1889, and 2 years later made her first vows as a nun. She dedicated herself to working for American Indians and African Americans in the Western United States. Taking the name of Mother Catherine, she established a religious congregation called the Sisters of the Blessed Sacraments for Indian and colored people, whose members would work for the betterment of those they were called to serve. From the age of 33 until her death in 1955, she dedicated her life and fortune to this work. She opened missionary boarding schools, schools for Native Americans and for Blacks. She financed the printing of 500 copies of the Navajo English Catechism of Christian Doctrine for the use of Navajo children. She founded the Javier University in the New Orleans, the first Catholic university in the United States for African Americans. Catherine had a heart attack at the age of 77, and she was forced to retire. She spent the rest of her life in silence and intense prayer. When she died on March 3rd, 1955, at age 96, she had more than 500 sisters teaching in 63 schools across the country, as well as 50 missions for Native Americans in 16 different states, bringing thousands closer to God because she knew that with God we always win.